Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for January 24th, 2025. Coming up, Nikola Jokić, still the best player in the world. The Lakers just totally demolished their rivals, the Celtics. And we got Joe Vardon to stay up late in Paris because he went to watch Wemby. Bonjour and bienvenue, everybody. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning, S. He told me to throw some French in there. So,
Bonjour.
There we go. Yeah, make it easy. We got a big French theme. No, not really. We just talked to Joe Vardon, but that'll be after the break. That Paris game is pretty fun, man. I really like that court. It's funny. They didn't go too garish with it like we've gotten used to with like the NBA Cup courts. The little design inside the 3-point line
Sleek
was nice.
Design. I liked it. Nice presentation.
Cool. Yeah, it was. The lighting was nice. I don't know. We could go on and on. The
French do it right, I guess.
Someone there is going to win a nice award for the lighting. Speaking of awards, Nikola Jokić, I think, is still like making a very strong case for MVP. I know that we have even said here, maybe that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has wrapped up. He scored 54 last night. Of course, 2 nights ago, they lost last night. Not that means he's not the front runner for MVP, but in stark contrast, the Nuggets won, and Nikola Jokić puts up 35 points, 22 rebounds, 17 assists, numbers that we haven't seen since Wilt Chamberlain did it in 1969, which it was funny enough. Like you could basically make that Nikola Jokic's middle name, like not since Wilt Chamberlain did it.
True.
And I mean, like it's almost every single time. I feel like Adam Mares might have made that joke. But the moment of this game, in a game where Jokic just does all kinds of crazy things, he hit a shot to end the third quarter at the buzzer. And I went and checked S, and we talked about this before the show. We checked the footage. The play-by-play data gives him credit for 66 feet, and we think it's at least 70 feet.
It feels like it's 70. Yeah.
So we're waiting on the Hawkeye or the Raptor or whatever the camera technology it is that they're using this year to tell us. But man, what another ridiculous game for Jokic.
He's so absurd, man. I think that's the only way to talk about Jokic. It's just that it's absurd watching him on the court do what he does every single day and not even bat an eye. It's just dominance every single time he's on the floor. The Nuggets win their minutes by 1,000,000, but when you look at the numbers, and I think one of the crazier things about it is that it's all within the flow of the game. He's not chucking up shots. He's not trying to force things. He's just out there playing basketball and doing it in a way that gets him those numbers, whether that's rebounding, whether that's passing, whether that's scoring the ball. He's shooting at a career high from 3 this year too, which is a massive part of what they need from him. It's like, the Nuggets are one of the worst 3-point rate teams in the league. Okay, I'll just be a 45% 3-point shooter. Yeah, no problem.
Well, that's what the Spurs used to do, right? Like, I mean, the Spurs didn't shoot many, but they got these great looks. And I mean, obviously, we've talked a lot about Boston and how they settle for okay looks quite often, right? And Jokic just doesn't. He's not. It's funny because he'll often go full, quarters without taking a shot. I think there was a game a couple weeks ago where the first 10 minutes and they had a 15-point lead and he didn't take a shot. So, he's not like this guy who's always out there looking for his own shot. But this season, he's done it more often than maybe at any point in his career. Took 19 in this game, but only 3 threes.
Yeah. That's the margin of error you have when you have the best player in the world. Like, if you think about the conversations we were having about the Nuggets the first couple months of the season, where it's like, where do they figure this stuff out? How are they supposed to get a rotation? Is this going to lead to the end of the Nuggets dynasty? A lot of people were talking about that.
The window is closed.
The window is closed, exactly. But when you have the best player in the world, he is able to create a margin of error for you to figure it out. And I think, between some of the injuries and them playing some of their younger guys more minutes in Strother and Peyton Watson, those guys figuring it out next to Jokic, Aaron Gordon coming off of the bench and sacrificing and being like, okay, I'll just be a bench player for you guys if that's needed. Russell Westbrook stepping into his own. And now Jamal Murray is playing really, really good basketball too. So he's afforded them the time to figure things out around him. And that's why he's the best player in the world, man.
Yeah. The Russ move to the starting lineup kind of has overshadowed Jamal Murray's resurgence. We talked a little bit like this season about him looking like he's had to play himself back into shape.
Totally.
And now he looks like he's in shape. Like some of these step backs that he likes to get to, the mid-rangers that were coming up flat into games, like he's actually hitting those now. And it just opens up the floor for everyone. But it is amazing what they're able to do with Russ and Christian Brown. I think like we talk a lot about the offense with this team, but I think some of the defensive disruption that these guys are able to pull off. I mean, there's a couple of sequences where they're jumping passes, in the backcourt. Even and applying pressure. So that has also been kind of a difference for them.
Yeah, totally. I think they're just finding different ways to win on both ends. And you mentioned the defense. Like, I think that's a huge part of what they had to figure out identity wise, what they would be. I'm just curious, like, how much further can Jokic take this team? Because they're creeping up the Western Conference standings. They're a game and a half out of second in the West. If I'm OKC, and OKC is having an incredible season, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, right? Yeah. We think OKC is a very, very good team, championship contender. Marcus Thompson talked about the pressure on OKC to win this year. I think Denver adds to that pressure because now this is a team that is formidable, has the best player in the world, and is also playing some of its best basketball at the right time.
And has the experience, right? Yeah. They've done it before. They've been there before. They know what it takes. I'm working on some Nuggets takes over the next few weeks. I just think this team is back in a big way. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
How many rings would Nikola Jokić need to be in your top 10?
Wow, top 10. Okay.
All time.
Whew. If you ask certain people, he's already there. I'll just say that. But I think he needs like one or two more to be solidified unanimously as a top 10 player in the world. All time. So I think two more would solidify it for most people. But I think if you look at the last 5 or 6 seasons of Nikola Jokic's career, it's one of the best peaks in NBA history. And when you look and compare his peak to other peaks, it's up there with some. I mean, name a name.
At least a conversation.
It's at least a conversation.
No matter the name for any stretch of time. I mean, again, he's basically put up the best season ever for 5 years in a row. To the point where you have to start. I mean, I don't know. Do you trust the stats? I don't know. The stats match the eye test with him. I'm not ready to say, he's top 10 ever. But man, if he wins 4 rings, it's not going to be a hard conversation. It's been rivalry week all week. So I'm not sure if you're aware. I know because like some of these games haven't had the luster. The Pacers and Spurs having this French game, I think also throws things off a little bit because we've been really focused on that. But the Lakers and Celtics met. And by the way, it was delayed because the Bucks and Heat were delayed. The Bucks were delayed getting out of New Orleans because of all the weather. It's snowing in the South. And so the start of that game was delayed, which the Bucks won. So Lakers game was delayed a little bit and I had to find it. I had to find it. So we got a bunch of blowouts, which shout out to Zena for calling this the other day. We're in blowout zone. But the Lakers, they looked really good against the Celtics. And a lot of people can try to throw this away and say, well, the Celtics are a little banged up. Second night of a back-to-back. I think outside of all that, the Lakers just looked good, right? Just in and of themselves.
The Lakers are easily one of the most confusing teams in the NBA. If you were to watch this game, you'd think, well, you know what? Anthony Davis is right. They are 1 or 2 pieces away from contending for a championship. But then you go and watch a game where they lose against the Dallas Mavericks without Luka and Kyrie, and you're like, okay, that maybe they're not the team that is 1 or 2 pieces away from the championship. I think they're inconsistent, which maybe lends to the fact that they are a couple pieces away from being a really good team. But when they have performances like they do tonight, it shows you that there's something there. And I think some of the guys on the team know that. Like AD talking and saying, hey, I would like to play the 4 more, and I would like some reinforcements this season. JJ Redick mentioning the same thing. I wonder if that's applying some pressure to get something done over the next couple of weeks. I don't know what that thing is.
Right. Or how they pull it off.
Or how they pull it off. Right.
I mean, at some point, though, look, Anthony Davis has been asking to play the 4 for his entire career. You know, he's Nobody a great center, though, which is so frustrating. So
I know.
Who knows? But I'll say this. When you look at their game tonight and you start looking at their rotation, I mean, Jackson Hayes has given them good minutes. You know, they're about to get Jared Vanderbilt back you know, this weekend, maybe against the Warriors.
Max Christie, we've talked about him.
Right. So they're getting a little bit healthier. I think there's a little bit more clarity. And you know, like I know that we probably feel like OKC, maybe Denver climbing up there as far as favorites in the West, but you know, anyone has a puncher's chance because we know health is not guaranteed for anybody. So I think they can set themselves up. This is a team that it's proven to be pretty tough. And can match up with anybody but Denver in a series, I think in a way that could be scary. But if they got the Nuggets, it's over.
It's like anybody but Denver.
Anybody but Denver. We got the all-star starters announced tonight. Yeah. That's what else we got. The East starters: Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Karl Anthony Towns. That's pretty good
fair
list.
I think it's fair.
Yeah. The West starters: Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic. I'm not so sure about the West.
So I think there's one guy out of the 10 that got snubbed. And it's the guy we're about to talk about in this Spurs-Pacers game. It's Victor Wembanyama. I think if you look at what Wemby is doing this season, he's having one of the best second-year seasons of NBA history. 24 points per game, doing it efficiently, shooting the ball well, 10 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 4 blocks, 1 steal. Like, he's doing it on both ends of the floor. The team is so much better defensively when he's on the floor too. He's been an enigma in the way that he plays basketball. And so I would have had Wemby in there, you know, even from a fan and media perspective. He is the future face of the league. So I think I would have had Wemby in there. Who do I take out? Do you take out the legacy guys and LeBron and KD? Tough decision to make there, right?
Well, I'll say this. I think that if he gets, I mean, you know, the fan vote plays into this. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that LeBron gets in. Wemby's getting in. He is in. The coaches are going to put him in.
Absolutely.
So, you know, should he have been a starter? I think so, because the story of this season, I think does, you know, Wemby is one of the main characters for sure. And I think that when you're looking at the All-Star game and you think about the starters, that's kind of the stuff that you think back to. And I think a moment where you had these guys walking out to line up, and it's Wemby next to Jokic, I do think that would have been kind of a moment for the league. Now, it doesn't matter. They'll get it next year.
Yeah.
And the year after that.
Yeah. This is not going to be a problem moving forward. Yeah.
But I will. Yeah. That was the one name that jumped out to me. And again, LeBron, he should just get in there for the rest of his career. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with like the
honorary
all-star emeritus, nod. You know, please. LeBron, Steph, KD, you guys are 3 of the 10 best to ever do it. Yeah. You can come here every year. I don't care. Stick around after the break. We're going to talk more Victor Wembanyama with Joe Vardon, who's in Paris, and he said the vibes were amazing. The NBA was in Paris, and we sent Victor Wembanyama home, and for some reason, the Indiana Pacers, because you know, maybe for the offense, I'm not sure. And we also, at The Athletic, we sent Joe Vardon because he's our international man of mystery or journalism. And you were in the building for the game, man. Victor Wembanyama, we, at this point, we have a little bit on the show where it's what did Wemby do?
Yeah.
Okay. And Wemby went home, and the Spurs put up 140 on the Pacers. Wemby had 30 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks, a steal, you know, ho-hum line for him.
Yeah, pretty regular stuff.
Yeah, and throwing balls off the backboard and dunking and throwing lobs to teammates and just erasing shots. You know, I think he had 5 blocks, but Zach Zarba called him for a goaltend, and I don't know that it was one. So it could have been 6. But, I was sitting, where I'm sitting right now is where Victor was post-game. This is where he did his press conference, and I was sitting one row right in the front row, listening to him and just watching him as this 21-year-old second-year player and thinking about what I just saw or what I saw in this building in August when he nearly led France to a win over the U.S. in the gold medal game. And you think about how young he is. And it is mind boggling what is to come with this guy. I mean, when was the last time that a player in his second year was one of the best players in the league?
LeBron,
I'm not,
probably, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but LeBron didn't make the All-Star game.
Yeah, he didn't even.
I mean, we're talking Kareem.
It's
magic.
Wild.
Yeah.
And he was like, Victor was asked a question, I think, about, I think it had something to do with, can he influence the NBA to keep coming back to Paris?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, that's not really for me to do that. But then the way he was speaking, like even at this young age, he understands the power that he is going to wield in this league for a very long time. So, we've been asking the question since LeBron was like 33, who was going to replace him as the face of the league. And we have the answer.
We definitely have the answer. And I mean, and he's also doing it on the court, above everything else is just the incredible impact that he has to winning and how he's doing it on both ends of the floor. And you see, I think Paris in general is a great, I guess, amplifier of what he's doing globally, internationally. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we have this next international star that can lead the next generation is a huge aspect, because you think of all the other great players in the league. You think of Jokic, you think of Embiid, SGA, all those guys, international stars. Is there a sense from the NBA side that they also understand the stakes of bringing more basketball internationally to Paris and other places?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure. Like there is, I don't know if there's anyone back in the league office in New York right now, as far as like Adams lieutenants. They're all here.
Yeah.
This is a massive week for them. And, a lot of it has to do with expanding Adams' priorities beyond just this game, which I know we'll talk about in a minute. But they know what they have. And there's a stat that Adam continues to recite, which is, it shakes me, actually. He says that 30% of the league is players not born in the United States. And so when you think about, in general, Adam wanting to have more of a foothold in Europe, well, if 30% of your sport is coming from outside of the US and most of it's here, you're going to do whatever you can to get more of a foothold there. So they absolutely understand this. And really what I would say is that there is a concern about making sure that the American pipeline continues. The United States is always going to have the depth.
Right.
We have 330 million people. We have basketball players, coming up. But, there is some real discussion about how we train our kids, and maybe we're not doing that the right way. And they do it right here in Europe. And that's something that Adam wants to bring back home.
I know Dave has a lot of
listen, I've got a lot of takes on that. I think one of the big things that they're doing a good job of is staying decentralized. So just keep your schools, keep your clubs, and keep the fresh ideas coming. We don't need basketball colonialism. It stunts growth and stunts ideas. Some of the greatest players are coming from overseas because they grew up learning how to play from people who gained their own experience, had their own ideas. It wasn't drilled into them by the old basketball coach. I don't want to go into a whole basketball development discussion, although we will at some point, because, we're going to talk some international stuff. But I do want to talk about a little bit like the vibes around the game, because, a lot of these games, I'll watch an NFL game when they go to London. A lot of American fans go, it becomes like a vacation. It's a little bit of a trip. What was the crowd like there? We were at the NBA Cup, and for the final, it felt a little flat because the team's fans weren't there. Obviously, Wemby's a huge star, and I think the Spurs have a strong following. I mean, David Robinson and Manu Ginobili were there. What was it like in the arena? Like, did it have like an NBA atmosphere? Was it more of an international style of basketball atmosphere, which you have a lot of experience with? What do you think?
Those are good questions. And I think, we should say that the Spurs have relationships in France that go back at least to 2000, when they were scouting Tony, and they drafted him in 2001. They had Tony Parker forever, and Boris Diaw played there too. So they have that. So these people of Paris, they are Spurs fans. Now, if those two guys had never played for San Antonio, that arena would have been packed tonight and rocking because this is a whole different deal. There was a, I've written about this before, that on nights when LeBron has it going, that there's a hum, and there's a hum that you hear in the surrounding parts of the arena, and it never stops.
Right.
I heard that hum tonight. I heard it, and it lasted pretty much until Victor was out of the game for good. There was just a constant, it just never stopped. Just that hum, waiting for the next thing to happen, or the crowd reverberating from whatever he had done 2 minutes prior. So it was an electric atmosphere. Don't say the word playoffs. It's not like that. This was not a playoff game. This was a celebration. And then I was just here, right? So was Victor.
Yeah.
So was Tyrese Halliburton for the medal rounds of the Olympics. And I think you'd have to say that of course that meant more because it's an entire country. All 12 guys are French. They're in the gold medal game against the United States and against LeBron and Steph. But not everybody there was a French fan. There was an American presence, and the Serbians were here, whatever.
Yeah.
Tonight, that was probably 15,000 Wemby Spurs fans. And so, in a way, it felt more like the purpose was even more singular tonight than for the US-France game in August.
Man, that's awesome. That's so cool to hear that there's this pocket of fan base. I mean, you talk about the 20 years.
It's like Nuggets fans in Serbia,
Yeah, like Nuggets fans in Serbia. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. It's very cool look, it's the new landscape of international basketball. And I think as we look forward to what is next for international basketball, and I imagine what Adam Silver is looking forward to is expansion. And so I know that topic comes up frequently when the NBA makes these trips. What did Adam Silver have to say about that? And is there any potential for there to be expansion in Europe for the NBA? So
expansion is a broad topic when it comes to the NBA and their interests, not just here in Europe, but almost anywhere. And there's two ways to look at this. There is, the league has 30 teams that play in North America, and that is the NBA, right? And they want to go to 32. So there's the discussion of where those teams will be set up. And, Adam himself has given a voice to the idea that, well, maybe one will be in Mexico City. And, he had said maybe one's in London or whatever, but that's not going to happen. And he's been a little bit more clear on that part, that they can't put a team in London or Paris that's going to play in the NBA because the travel. And I don't even need to explain that. Right. Yeah. So what the real discussion is about Europe with the NBA is this idea that Adam wants to create a league here. And of course, there is an issue with that, namely that there's already a substantial basketball structure here. Yeah. It's the Euro League, and it's not just the Euro League. It is because only the top teams from all the individual leagues all throughout Europe make it to that. And there's some years where you might play in the Euro League, and there's some years where you might stink, and so you're not in that. So it's much more complicated than what we're used to anyway, and that whole structure exists. And Adam has to find a way to navigate that and get the investment that he wants from maybe new money streams, some partners that he's cultivating that maybe currently aren't allowed to invest in the NBA back on our shores. And he's got to have buy-in from enough partners in Europe so that they could do that. They could take advantage of the markets he wants to take advantage of without getting into a cold war or worse with the existing clubs. So they're not done yet. They're having these meetings. And then I think, he said this, that they need to present the information to the board of governors in March, just what they've heard. So the owners clearly haven't signed off on anything like this yet. And Adam still sounds serious about it, but to me, it felt like there was a stall in momentum. He disagreed with that. I asked him directly. He said that wasn't the case. But, you know, a month ago, we had the Secretary General of FIBA saying, we're going to know in a month what's going on.
That's
and here we are a month later, and we don't
see it happening. I mean, there's not been much of an appetite for the NBA academies in Europe. And even the ones that they've launched in other places haven't really been gangbusters. I think that is an indicator, and also like there's not much incentive for the teams in Europe to buy into an NBA league and allow it to happen. I mean, FIBA still has to work. You know, the world politics of basketball go. I mean, I don't have to tell you, Joe. They run really, really deep, and these leagues already exist on a knife edge when it comes to their revenue streams and whatnot. I think that. It's probably a non-starter. You know what? They're not thinking outside the box, though, when it comes to expanding to Europe, because like, couldn't the NBA fund like the return of the Concorde and just do the cross-Atlantic flight in like 2 hours? You know, I think that, I mean, look, you've been covering expansion for a while. And I think that, and would you agree the most likely scenario is the two US based teams, probably Seattle, and this theoretical idea that Vegas is now a sports hub and could definitely support an NBA team. That seems most likely, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I went to Mexico City. I had a wonderful time. I loved it there. And
you met with my buddy Nick Lagios.
Absolutely. I mean, it was an absolutely wonderful experience. And I left thinking the way it's set up now, they can't have an NBA team there.
Right. Yeah.
And
I remember I actually would highly recommend the piece that you wrote about it, because you talked about the travel and the distance between the airport and getting from certain places to one another, which is one of the biggest hurdles for a Mexico City
I'll
team.
link that in the show notes tonight too, Joe. Along with your Wemby story. Joe, get out of it. I know it's late for you right now. It's pretty early for us, so get out of here. And we're going to get out of here too. It's a good place to stop for us. Joe Vardon, thank you very much as always. For Es Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.